Hello, my brothers and sisters. I'm Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to another episode in our series of educational videos about this year's elections. You can see the whole series at electionvideos.org. We try to help our fellow believers, our fellow citizens, prepare to be active, informed voters in this year's elections. What I want to talk to you today about is the fact that the party matters. What I mean is this: the party to which the candidate you vote for belongs to matters in deciding your vote. Now let me explain why. First of all, let's talk about the moral dimension of voting overall. Voting is a human activity, and any human activity, any human choice is the subject of morality, and therefore the subject of what we as religious and spiritual leaders talk about. Morality covers any human activity. The voting booth is not a morality-free zone. Elections and politics are not somehow exempt from the considerations of what makes our choices good or bad from a moral point of view. So it's not just politics entering into this. It's morality. And that's the dimension from which we're talking about it today. Now, when you're going to evaluate the morality or immorality of a particular action, a particular choice, you take into account what that action is, what the motives for it might be, and what the circumstances are, including what the possible foreseeable results of that action will be. And all of this comes into account in regard to voting. We know we have a moral duty to vote. It is a good thing to vote. We want to vote for the right reasons, but we want to look here at the circumstances. What are the circumstances of our vote that might make it a morally good or bad choice? Again, we're not talking about politically good or bad, but morally good or bad. Well, the consequences of that vote. You're not just making some kind of statement by voting. You're actually transferring power to that candidate and putting him or her in a particular office where he or she is going to be able to make decisions that impact a lot of people and their rights and their lives and their safety. Now, this is easy to understand when it comes to the choice of a particular candidate. The morality of my choice has to do with, well, what does this candidate stand for? What does he or she believe? What have they promised that they would do if they get into office? Are they going to protect life, or are they going to let life be taken by abortion? Are they going to be in favor of my religious freedom, or are they going to be opposed to it? Do they have plans for healthcare, economy, security, and education that have a track record that sound like they're going to work, or do they seem to be not too well informed in those areas? These are some of the questions we ask ourselves about the candidate, so that we come to determine as best as we can that if that candidate gets into office, here are the foreseeable consequences of the way they're going to govern, the way they're going to vote, the legislation that they are going to support. Well, if those things are important, then so is the position of the party to which that candidate belongs. In other words, with some exceptions, the candidates that you'll be voting for belong to a political party. And the two major ones, of course, are the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. There are a whole lot of other parties, much smaller, but a lot of them. And in some cases, you may see candidates on the ballot who belong to these other parties. But by and large, you are choosing between a Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate, all up and down the ticket, from very, very local races to state legislators, governors, United States members of Congress, and of course the President of the United States. You're going to be voting either for a Democrat candidate or for a Republican candidate most of the time. Again, I acknowledge there are many, many other smaller parties involved as well. So what are the positions of these parties? Isn't that important to know? Because when you put a candidate into power, you're also putting a party into power. Take, for example, the office of governor or of president. When a man or a woman of a particular party occupies that office, all the other people they bring in with them to fill other positions in the executive branch of government, either at the state or federal level, are also, again, there could be exceptions, but by and large, they're going to be people of that particular party, and therefore of that particular party's philosophy and policy preferences and worldview. And maybe they're going to be, for example, they're either going to be pro-life for the most part, all these other people that they're bringing in, or they're going to be pro-abortion. For example, the President of the United States is naming cabinet positions. Who's the Secretary of State? Is the Secretary of State going to be in favor of our country exporting abortion to other countries, or of protecting the babies in the womb in those other countries? Is he going to be defending religious freedom, or is he going to turn a blind eye to religious persecution in other countries? The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Health and Human Services Secretary, all these people and many, many others in many different positions, what their philosophy is going to be and what their policy preferences are going to be is going to follow the party that the president belongs to. Same thing with the governors in your state. Now let's look at the legislatures, whether again it's your state legislative body to whom you're electing someone, or the United States Congress, the House of Representatives, or the U.S. Senate. What party the candidate belongs to and what the positions and preferences and philosophies of that party are matter a lot in determining your vote. Why? Because when you look at a legislative body, whether on the state or the federal level, the party doesn't only indicate the preferences of that candidate when it comes to public policy, but the party also is either going to be in majority control of that legislative body or in a minority position. Right now, for example, prior to the elections of 2020, the United States Congress is split between the two parties. So the House of Representatives has a majority of Democrats, while the U.S. Senate has a majority of Republicans. Now, what difference does that make, you might ask? Isn't it more important what the individual candidate stands for? No, not really. It's equally important and sometimes more important what the party stands for, because if you are voting in a Democrat and that shifts the balance of power, as it did in the midterms of 2018, if it shifts the balance of power of the entire House of Representatives to the Democrat Party, well, then guess what happens? What ends up happening is that the Speaker of the House, who has a lot of power, who's third in line for president, and who makes a lot of decisions and controls a lot of things that happen in the House, belongs to the majority party. And what else happens is that the party that has the majority in that particular legislative body, in this case we're using the House of Representatives as an example, that party controls the committees. So you have a majority of that party, not only in the whole House, but you have a majority of that party on the different committees. Now, the different committees in the U.S. House, and the same thing is true in the Senate, control the different legislative activity that takes place before a bill gets voted on by the whole House. And if the Democrats, for example, as they are now, are in control of those committees, then bills that even a very, let's use pro-life as an example, a very pro-life Democrat, of course it's hard to find them anymore, they've practically vanished from the House of Representatives, but let's say you're voting for a Democrat candidate because, well, now we found one who's pro-life and you want to see him or her elected. Even if they are elected, they may introduce the greatest pro-life bill that we've ever thought of. But it's the committee, now controlled by that party, that is going to decide if that legislation even gets passed along to, if that bill gets passed along to the wider House for a vote. And if that party is opposed to that particular position, i.e. pro-life, the bill isn't even going to get out of committee. So you may have voted for the individual candidate because he or she is pro-life, but because he or she belongs to a party that is pro-abortion, and because putting him or her in office shifted control of the House to the pro-abortion party, you actually gave more power to the pro-abortion agenda than to the pro-life agenda, even though the candidate you elected was pro-life. And you can apply this, of course, across the board to any issue, but you have to understand how the process works. Right now, for example, a bill has been held up in the House of Representatives that would protect babies born alive after a failed abortion. And all the Republicans in the House want to have a vote on this bill, but it hasn't even been able to come up for a vote in this entire Congress because the Democrat Party opposes it. There are some individual Democrats who support it, not many, but because the party opposes it, the bill hasn't even been brought to a vote, much less passed. So, my friends, the party matters. It matters. Whether you're talking about a local election, a state election, a federal election, or election for President of the United States, please find out not only where the individual candidate stands on the various issues, find out where the party stands on the various issues. One of the ways to do that is read the party platform. The party platform is a document issued every 4 years. So the one in effect right now is the one that was drafted and released in 2016 in the summer at the time of the conventions. There will be another issuing of the party platforms with any changes the parties want to make in them this coming summer for the elections of 2020. But those platforms are publicly available documents, and we've made them available at votinginfo.net. Votinginfo.net is a special website we've created where you can read the party platforms, and also you can get a one-sheet, I have it here in front of me, a one-sheet party comparison where we just take a number of issues and just take a relevant quote from the respective party platforms so that you can see where they stand. For example, on the issue of abortion, and that's the one I deal with on a full-time basis, the Republican Party is pro-life. They are asking for a recognition that the baby's right to life must not be infringed. The baby has to be protected. On the other side of the aisle, the Democrat Party favors the so-called right to abortion without any restrictions and even wants taxpayers to help pay for abortions. Those are very different positions. It's the position of the party. And when you vote for somebody, don't just look at the name. Look at the letter after the name and consider both of those things. Well, I hope this is helpful for you, my friends. We're ready to help you with any aspect of preparing for the elections. Our overall election website, prolifevote.com. And again, for more of the videos in this particular educational series, go to electionvideos.org. I'm Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. God bless you.